And we're live. Welcome back to today's national weather forecast. For the most part, it's going to be good news today. And you can see that just based on this warnings map right here. That is about as blank of a warnings map as you're typically ever going to see. So there's mostly good news. Of course, we do still have these high wind warnings in Texas. The good news there is that fire threat appears to be gone. Moisture has returned to that region. So it is going to still be windy there, some gusts of maybe 40 to 45 miles per hour, but at least some moisture has returned to the area, so that fire threat we were talking about yesterday appears to be gone. And then down here in the southeast, there are some scattered flood threats here, but you'll understand why I'm not too worried about those. When we look at the actual precipitation that's coming in, looks like it's fairly minimal, especially for this region, which is used to getting a couple of inches of rain every now and then. And then also up here in the northeast, I think you'll be able to see it on the live stream right here, we have one tiny little winter weather advisory. That's due to a lingering low pressure system that is going to be bringing some light snow to the northeast, mostly lake effect snow to New York, but that's about 1 to 2 inches. So some light rain in the southeast, some wind in Texas, but no longer a fire threat, and maybe an inch of snow into the northeast. Entire eastern half of the country is, I would say, looking about as mild as you're ever going to see it. Now in the west here, this is where we do have some stuff going on, some weather actually happening. We have one storm that's going to be coming in today. That's mostly going to be going through Washington, Oregon, and very northern parts of California. We are going to take a close look at the Olympic Mountains. That is one place, maybe the one place in the entire country, where there could be some cause to concern because they might get over a foot or even 2 feet of snow right up here. But for the most part, when it comes to these storms, the one coming in today and then the one that's going to be lingering over California all next week, I'm thinking on the positive side. Because California is in a drought, it's never too early to start thinking about wildfire season. So I'm actually looking forward to these couple of storms we have pushing into California. It's going to bring decent amount of rain to the coast and what looks like maybe a foot of snow to the Sierras. Big change in the weather models there since yesterday. I think that's been the theme of the week. Every single time we look at those two storms coming into California, they change. And in this forecast, it looks like that one next week has changed. How it's changed, we'll just have to see when we're actually diving into the local regions. So just basically everything I just said, but seen another way. Here's the overall precipitation map for the country. There's that low right there, the one that is bringing all those winds to New Mexico and Texas where we're not getting all that precipitation. But as that moves down, some of the moisture is moving back into that area. So although we still have the winds, the fire threat I don't think it's not nearly as strong as it was yesterday. So then as that rain goes through, you'll see that's about as light of rain as you're ever going to see through Texas and the southeast. There's still the chance for some thunderstorms, but that's some light rain, especially for this region. There are some places that might get an inch or so, but certainly not the 7-inch forecast we had in the past. I guess that's a good way to put this weather warnings map in perspective. It was only about 2 weeks ago where we had that Arctic blast of cold air where large portions of the country were 50 degrees below average. We had the wind chill warnings because some places felt like they were negative 50 degrees. It was stretching all the way down into Texas. We had the power outages. We had the ice storm stretching from Texas all the way up into Pennsylvania. That was a lot of extreme weather. Right now, looking pretty good. So I think that's the theme of the forecast right there, and especially when we get into this weekend. So throughout the day today, as that rain is pushing through Texas and the southeast, you'll notice there's actually going to be some heavy rain and heavy snow into California. Now that's just going to be a quick mover though, just clicking back there. You see it comes in, should be coming in sometime today. We'll look at the exact timing later in this video. It brings some heavy rain and snow to Northern California and then it moves through. So it's not going to be able to pile on the totals for all that long of a period of time, but when it does come through, that's going to bring some weather to us throughout I think mostly tonight is when that's moving in. And then this is as we get into this weekend. So we'll go to the start of Saturday, when you're most likely waking up Saturday morning or getting started on your day. There's almost no precipitation throughout the entire country. Maybe some, maybe some snow up here in the very northeast. But overall, and especially on the eastern half of the country, as we click into through Saturday and then through Sunday, you'll notice almost no precipitation for the entire country. So it looks like the extreme weather that we had 2 weeks ago with those ice storms and Arctic blast of cold air seems to be giving us a break for this weekend. But then at the start of next week, we do have that next low pressure system that'll be moving into California and bringing widespread rain and snow for what appears to be almost all next week. It looks to be coming in on Monday, start to get some light rain and snow, and then it's just going to stay over California, slowly move over the west, continuing to bring light rain and snow to California all the way into, it looks like Thursday now. That's the one where the weather models have significantly changed since we were talking about it yesterday. And overall, I'd say they've weakened that storm a little bit, as you'll see when we check out the totals. So just seeing all that another way, up in the northeast, there's that trough up there. You think about the winds up in the northeast. Those winds are flowing from Canada down into Pennsylvania. So what that's going to do is allow for some lake effect snow to happen. It picks up some moisture over the lakes, drops it into the cold northeast where it's pushing that cold air down as well. And that's how we're getting, excuse me. I need to take a sip of water. Okay, so it goes live streaming, right? All right, so that's going to bring that lake effect snow to the northeast. And then down here in the central or south central parts of the U.S., that's that low pressure system that's bringing the winds to New Mexico and Texas, and then bringing that rain. I'd say it's moderate rain. It doesn't look all that light, but it also doesn't look heavy as it goes through Louisiana. That's that low pressure system there. And then clicking back and looking at the west, you'll see this trough start to push in. That's gonna just graze the very northern parts of California. That's where we get that heavy rain and snow, but it's a quick mover. You can see how fast that trough moves through, and then it just kind of disappears. A lot of times when there's a storm for the west, it'll continue to deepen and then turn into a major storm for the Midwest or the Northeast. That one appears to just kind of be disappearing and moving up into Canada. And then behind that, as we start next week, you'll see this next system move through it. First starts out bringing some rain and snow to Washington, and then just watch how slowly this moves across the west. It first came in Monday, and then right here it's just rotating and rotating as it slowly moves over Southern California. Now, the biggest difference I'd say with that from the forecast model yesterday is it's looking a bit weaker. Yesterday we were talking about how when isobars are really close together, for example, I bet if we go to Texas right now, the isobars are pretty close together where we have all those strong winds. Actually, it's not actually looking that strong anymore. That's interesting to see. Up there in the northeast, that's an example where you have isobars close together. When that's happening, you think of it, it's a strong gradient. So the winds are flowing in that area much stronger than they would be if it's something like over Arizona right now, where the lines are very far apart, there's not a very big gradient, and the winds are weak. Now with that next system that's coming in next week, you'll notice how far apart those lines are. They look like they're a little closer together down here as you get into Mexico, but for the most part over almost all of California, the storm itself isn't looking that strong. So what that's going to do is bring some rain and snow, but not heavy rain and snow, and that it looks weaker than it did yesterday, so some of our totals appear to have been reduced. Looking at the totals, you can see that rain as it strips through Kansas, Oklahoma, down through eastern Texas and Louisiana. As you can see, there's select portions that might get an inch of rain, but this region's pretty used to getting 3 to 4 inches at sometimes, and it was only a week ago when I was giving a forecast for this region, and 7 inches of rain were forecasted. So the fact that we're getting 1 inch, I would say, isn't too concerning there. Where we are getting some heavy rain, though, is up here. As that system pushes into the west right there, that's going to bring some heavy rain to the coast. That's going to be about 2 to maybe 2.5 inches along Washington, Oregon, and the very northern parts of California. Just think of that trough as that first one moves through. It just grazes the northern parts of California, so that's why almost all of central and southern California are missing out with that first system. Then the second one that comes through, notice as I click through the weekend, the majority of the country did not change at all on this map. So going back to Saturday, that's what it looks like. Most of that is from that low pressure system that went through, and then that first system that goes through right here. Watch as we go through the weekend. Barely any changes whatsoever for almost the entire country. But then as we start next week, that's when that next slowly rotating storm starts to push in, and you'll see how it starts up here in the north and then works its way down into Southern California. And right there, that kind of goes along with this map where we're seeing the strongest part of the storm, where those isobars, the lines of constant pressure, are closest together. That looks like where we're going to be getting the most rain with that second storm as it pushes through. Overall, it looks like the majority of California will at least be getting some rain, and especially along the coast where we're getting an inch. It's less than yesterday's model was showing, but it's still something. Certainly help with the drought and hopefully give us a better outlook and more moisture to our vegetation to prepare us for this next fire season. So looking at the snowfall, just clicking through there, that's that first system that goes through. You can see it's still, that one actually looks pretty similar to yesterday. We got some heavy snowfall going into the Olympic Mountains, maybe 1 or 2 feet of snow. We'll look at the exact totals later in this video. And then the very northern parts of California have the potential to get a foot there. And then there's that lake effect snow in New York. You can see why I'm not calling that a major snowstorm by any standards, about 1 to 2 inches there. And then as we continue to click through, this is all the way into next Friday. So anything beyond next Friday, you really can't trust the weather forecast at all. Even more than 3 days out is when it gets a little bit shaky. So the overall fact that there's going to be a storm for the west, I would say, is pretty confident that that second storm comes in. The exact totals and where it's going to hit is a little bit shakier in the models, as we've seen throughout this week, because every time we look at it, it appears to have changed. Now that one, that's clicking all the way through. You'll notice not that much more snow is added on to Washington or Oregon, and then the Sierras are looking like less than we saw yesterday. Yesterday, we were seeing maybe 2.5 feet of snow. Now it looks like it's going to be maybe a foot and a half throughout Tahoe and the rest of the Sierras right there. And then you'll notice one of our storms that comes through us goes up into the Midwest and brings maybe 2 to 3 inches of snow to parts of Wisconsin, Michigan, and then up into Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. I'm not even going to spend any time on that yet because that's so far off in the forecast. I guarantee that overall forecast model will change, and even right now, it's not looking like all that much. Maybe 2 to 4 inches at the very end of next week. Now, one thing that is worth noting is those winds that are still going on in Texas. As you can see, those are showing up as 45 to 50 mile per hour winds. But the good news is they're being mixed with a little more moisture today, so that fire threat isn't as big of a concern as it was yesterday. Yesterday, the conditions were looking about as bad as you can get for a wildfire. Today, much more moisture, so although it's going to be still very windy, we at least don't have as big of a fire threat. Then those will be gone, and there's also that high wind warning up here right along the coast. That's that storm sitting off the coast right about now, getting ready to move in and start to bring that heavy rainfall along the coast right there. So when that's happening throughout the day today, there are going to be some wind gusts, and that is why we have that high wind warning along the Oregon and California coast up there. So Looking at the temperatures, this is showing the temperature anomalies. This shows how far off of the averages are you. Let's look at this afternoon to see what kind of temperature anomalies we can expect. It looks like the northeast is a little below average. That makes sense because you think of that overall pattern. It's that wind being pulled down from Canada. That's what's causing the lake effect snow in New York. But you think it's also pulling down that cold air, which is why New York appears to be below average. The biggest thing I notice on this map, though, is what's going on up here in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota. Looks to be about 20 to 25 degrees above average. So when it comes to the temperature anomalies, how far you off from averages throughout the entire country, I would say that's the first thing that comes to mind. That right there, that's 25 degrees above average. And there's actually some times in the forecast where parts of North Dakota will actually be warmer than some places in the southeast. Not something you see often, so I thought that was pretty interesting. And then that pattern continues on Sunday, where we're still warm up here in North Dakota, South Dakota, still cold up here in the northeast, maybe even getting 15 to 20 degrees below average. And then the rest of the country looking below average in the east and then relatively mild in the west. And that appears to be continuing into next week. So if we look at the temperatures themselves, let's go to this afternoon. It looks like the northeast makes sense. They're below average temperatures. Looks like they're going to be below freezing. A great way to look at this map is just look where the blue colors are. That shows where you're below freezing. The yellows and greens are where you're in the high 30s to 40s. Where you get into the oranges is the 50s, and then the dark reds is where you're into the 60s and 70s. So looking at this afternoon, first glance looks like the northeast is below freezing, and then down throughout the southeast and Texas, we're relatively warm. And then as well as California, looks to be in the 70s throughout the valley for this afternoon, which is nice, I would say. And that's actually even a little bit surprising because that's when that storm is coming in. So we'll have to take a closer look at that when we get to the local forecasts. And then as we get into Saturday, very similar story. It's still cold up in the northeast. The rest of the country is looking relatively mild. And then as we get into Sunday, again, same story again. Northeast still looking below freezing, rest of the country looking mild, except for up here in North Dakota and South Dakota, where we are quite warm. Right there we see a 59 in South Dakota, and if we look down into the southeast, which is typically much warmer than South Dakota, you can find some 51s, 53s, so that's very interesting to see there, that with all that extremely warm air up there in the very north, you can see how warm those temperatures are compared with other parts of the country. And I would say that is some great news to see those 25 to 30 degree above average temperatures up here, because it wasn't too long ago when we had that Arctic blast of cold air, and it was all these northern states that were seeing 40 to 50 degree below average temperatures. There was wind chills of negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm sure everyone in this area is looking forward to that nice warm air that's going to be sitting over you for what appears to be this entire weekend, and then even getting into the start of next week. So that's what's going on throughout this weekend, and over the next, looking a little bit into the next 5 days around this time next week, here's what's going on farther off in the forecast. So this is an average of what's going to happen 6 to 10 days out, or at least is expected to happen. This is March 10th to March 14th, looking at the probabilities of your temperatures. As you can see, there's a very high probability that the entire western half of the country is going to be below average. It's going to be cold. And then the entire eastern half of the country and parts of south central look to be above average. And this is about as confident as I've ever seen this map. Where you have the lighter colors, that's where it's not all that confident. It's saying there's maybe a 5 to 10% chance right here in North Dakota, South Dakota, that it's going to be a little bit cold on the western side of the states. Now, here in Southern California, that's saying this model is almost positive that 6 to 10 days out, Southern California is going to be cold, or at least colder than normal. And then up here, as we get into the Midwest, Ohio Valley stretching up into the Northeast, it is very confident that we're going to have above average temperatures 6 to 10 days out. So it's interesting to compare that with what's going on in the near-term forecast, where all that warm air is over North Dakota, South Dakota, and the Northeast is cold. As we click to 6 to 10 days out, you notice that extremely warm air moves into the Northeast and the Midwest, just like that extended snapshot is showing us. That's where those 20 to 25 degree above average temperatures that we have in North Dakota right now appear to be moving into the Northeast towards the end of next week. So that's the snapshot of the temperatures 6 to 10 days out. You can combine that with the snapshot of the precipitation 6 to 10 days out. And I would say this is some good news, especially down here for California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico. This whole area is still in some kind of drought. In some cases, we're in extreme and exceptional drought. So it's great to see that over the next 5 days, there appear to be 2 storms coming in. And then in the 6 to 10 day forecast, there appears to be a higher probability of more precipitation coming in. So that is great to see for the Southwest, where it is still very dry right now. And there are many places that are well below average in their typical rainfall totals. So it's good to see that over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be hopefully making up some of that deficit. If I had to give my opinion, I don't think we're going to be getting enough rain to make up for the deficits, but it's at least as well, where the Southeast appears to be a little bit drier than we've seen in the past. I'm not sure if you could actually see that on this map. The live stream is only cropped for a small square on my actual screen so that you don't see the 60 tabs that I have open. But hopefully you can see the Southeast right there, looking like it's changing to a bit of a drier pattern, especially in Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. Then if we look at the extended forecast, it's painting a different picture. It looks like where in the short range, or the 6 to 10 day forecast, it looks like whole west is cold, whole east is warm. It looks like in the 3-month forecast, almost the entire country is warm. And then if we look at the 3-month precipitation outlook, it looks like, unfortunately, the Southwest overall is looking dry. So even though we're getting some precipitation over the next 2 weeks, it looks like overall in the 3-month average, we're looking dry. But the Midwest appears to be staying in that precipitation. So if I had to give my opinion on how that precipitation is going to be pushing into the Midwest and Northeast, because you see in the 6 to 10 day, we have that precipitation expected for the Midwest and Northeast, but we're also expecting well above average temperatures. So I'm thinking that precipitation is mostly going to fall in the form of rain. It's why I'm hesitant to say there's any major snowstorms in the forecast. All the factors I'm seeing are pointing to the fact that there aren't going to be major snowstorms in the extended forecast for the Midwest or Northeast. But again, we'll just have to wait and see because forecast models often change. So then in the 3-month forecast, it looks even more likely that a lot of that rain going in, or precipitation going into the Midwest, will actually be in the form of rain. But again, that's unfortunate to see for the Southwest here. That's predicting dry air for Southern California, where we already are very dry, Arizona, New Mexico. I was showing a lot of the fuel moisture maps earlier this week, and this is an area that is already extremely dry. So it's unfortunate to see that the 3-month average appears to be continuing that dry trend. I mean, this is where you almost kind of are happy in the fact that weather forecasts are often wrong, because that could change, and hopefully it does, so that our next wildfire season is a little bit better. Now, with that being said, the reason last year was, in my opinion, the worst wildfire season of all time was in large part due to that one extreme lightning storm that we had that went up and down through Southern California to NorCal, started hundreds of lightning fires all across the state, and that's what really kicked off our wildfire season. There was just so many fires that our resources got overwhelmed there was no way to fight them all, so a few of them grew into just ridiculous proportions, into 4 of the top 5 largest wildfires of all time. And it was just because there were so many going on at the same time, there was no way to fight all of them. So guaranteed some of them were going to grow large. Now what I'm trying to say here is that lightning storm that started all those and made last year the worst fire season of all time, that lightning storm was a very rare event. So although this map is shedding a rather concerning light on next year's wildfire season, I'm still thinking it's not going to be as bad as last year, because last year was quite an anomaly when it came to that lightning storm and just the overall largeness of the fires that we had. So just summing everything up that we've said so far in the national forecast, overall, we're looking good. I would say that fire threat is gone from Texas and New Mexico. Still going to be getting some winds there. We do still have some scattered flood warnings or flood threats in the southeast, but nothing widespread. And as we look at the precipitation itself, it's not looking like anything major. Northeast will be getting 1 to 2 inches of lake effect snow, and then nothing else throughout the entire weekend forecast. And then as we look at the west here, we do have some things going on. We got these winter weather advisories, the high wind warnings, but I actually look at those with a positive light because that's going to be bringing some much needed rain and snow to California. Now we will be taking a closer look at the Olympic Mountains there in Washington though, because that is one spot where major impacts are expected. But I think a good place to start would be down here where we have this high wind warning and those slight flood threats in the southeast, because I want to explain why I'm not actually too concerned about those flood threats. So just looking at the overall pattern of what's causing this is that little low pressure system right there that brought some rain to Southern California earlier this week. It was great to get some rain there. And then it brought that fire threat that we were talking about yesterday to Texas and New Mexico. Those winds will remain, but now there's more moisture as that low pushes down into the Gulf of Mexico. So if you missed that, starts off right about here above Texas and just slowly moves down into the Gulf of Mexico. If we look at the precipitation that's expected with that, you can see it's already started as of this morning, and then as we get into this afternoon, it's just going to spread throughout Oklahoma, eastern Texas, and then work its way into Louisiana, where we start to get some heavier rain. That might be where there's the possibility this afternoon for some thunderstorms in eastern Texas or Louisiana, but then it moves into the Gulf of Mexico. You can see right there where it turns into some heavy rainfall. That's what heavy rainfall looks like, where it's 0.2 to 0.5 inches per hour and you get those dark yellows and oranges. It looks like by the time that happens is when it's already moved off the coast. And that actually makes sense because that's where it would be able to pull in a bunch of moisture and collect all that moisture in the Gulf of Mexico. But as it moves through Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, you notice for the most part that rainfall is looking fairly light. So as we click through right here, you'll see this provides some evidence to that light rainfall claim. Where in some past forecasts, I've been talking about storms that are causing 5 to 7 inches of rainfall in actually this exact same region. This storm as it goes through looks like it's going to bring maybe a ½ inch of rain to parts of Oklahoma. And then right there where we started to see that heavier rain where there's the chance of some thunderstorms in eastern Texas and Louisiana, that's where our rainfall totals could get from ½ an inch to even an inch in that one little purple bullseye there. So if we want to see that closer, we can take a more local look. There is when the light rain starts to come in. It looks to be about 12 p.m. on Friday. So you'll start to get some rain and maybe even while you're watching this video. And then as we get into 6 p.m. Friday, that's when some of the heavier rain comes in. That's where we might get a couple little thunderstorms in eastern Texas. And then as we get into tonight, that's where we get the heavier rain down in Louisiana as that storm moves over the state. And then by 6 a.m. Saturday, it appears to be gone. So taking a closer look at that rainfall as it builds in, there's that bullseye where Lake Charles could get 0.8 inches. There's that little purple bullseye right there that might get an inch of rain. But for the most part, the majority of Louisiana is getting either 0.1 to 0.5 inches of rain. So not a major storm by any standards, and especially by south and southeast standards, where, again, I feel like I'm always forecasting storms down here that are 3 to 4 to 5 inches of rain. So good to see that the extreme weather seems to be taking a little bit of a break. Now, with that being said, I always got to cover my bases. Never trust me, I'm still learning as a forecaster, so always stay updated with your local resources, especially when I'm saying something isn't, that I don't think something is going to be that bad. So here's looking at that storm another way. There you can see that counterclockwise circulation, and I wanted to show this because it still shows those strong winds going right between New Mexico and Texas right there. So that will be bringing some strong wind gusts today, and actually we could look at the wind gusts on this map. Clicking right there, you can see those wind gusts. That's looking to be about 40 to 45 miles per hour, and that's going to be spreading throughout Texas. It started this morning, and then as we get into this afternoon, those will spread into the eastern parts of the state, and as the storm moves south, those strong wind gusts will move south as well. The good news there is it looks like they're weakening as they move south. The bulk of it looks to be right there at about 1 p.m. today, where we have possibly even some 60 mile per hour gusts. Now, that is certainly a big part of the story. The reason I'm not as concerned about it as yesterday is because we're mixing that. I haven't actually looked at this, so this might be a risk. Actually, it perfectly shows what's going on. We're mixing that with some moisture pushing into this region. So you can actually see how this is working. All that brown color right there, that's where your humidities are at dangerous levels for wildfire, where you're around 10%. And you can see how these winds are pushing that moisture in, which is just great to see from a wildfire perspective. So, wow, I wish I'd clicked through this earlier, but it's actually kind of nice that I'm clicking through it now because I'm seeing this for the first time with all of you guys. All those winds are pushing that moisture out of the region, which is why we don't have the wildfire threat there today. So that was a bit of a tangent I didn't actually mean to go on. What I meant to talk about was this low right here. You can see it's that counterclockwise circulation. It's bringing those winds right there. And then as it moves down here, you see what it's going to be doing throughout the day today. You think winds flow into a low pressure system. Winds typically flow from high to low. So throughout the day today, most of the air coming into Texas and Louisiana will be coming from the north. So a lot of that air being pulled in will be on the colder side, and as we just saw, it'll also be bringing in some moisture. So I think the biggest concern in this area was that wildfire threat. So both that cold air being pulled in and that moisture being pulled in, because of that low is moving south, and then the winds follow it, pulling that moist, colder air from the north into Texas. That's what's reducing that wildfire threat in that area. And then, like I said, after that, it just moves off into the Gulf of Mexico and then appears to disappear after that. Heaviest rain throughout eastern Texas and Louisiana, but about maybe an inch at the most. Doesn't look like anything major right there. Now, this would be a good time to just go up into the northeast and see what's going on in the northeast. We talked about this earlier in the national forecast, but it's this low pressure system all the way up here in Canada that's actually causing the weather in the northeast right now. I should actually back out so you can see this better. There's that low pressure system up here in Canada. Look how wide of a field of counterclockwise circulation we have here. So what that's doing is on the left side of this, it's bringing cold air down into the northeast. So what that's doing is, well, one, bringing that cold air down. You can see we're below freezing temperatures. You can easily tell that by the blue color on the map. Green means you're above freezing. Blue means you're below freezing. Now all that counterclockwise circulation is bringing that cold air down from Canada. Now what that also does is bring some air over the Great Lakes, which I believe are for the most part still relatively unfrozen, especially here in Erie and Ontario. What that's going to do is right where we zoom into the lakes and you see that wind flowing over. As it goes over, it's able to pick up some moisture over the lakes, especially because they're unfrozen for the most part. It grabs the moisture and then it goes into New York. And right here you can see we're actually colder than we were over the lake. So when that moisture hits this colder air, if you don't know, cold air can't hold moisture as much as warmer air can. So as that moisture gets into New York right here, that's where it falls as lake effect snow. Excuse me. So that's why that happens. It's almost like if you were filling up a sponge with water as you go over the lakes, and then as you get into the colder air, you think that colder air condenses it. It's almost like squeezing the sponge. That's where we get the lake effect snow, right there in New York. So we can actually see that take place right there. It almost perfectly matches what we were just looking at with those winds flowing over Lake Ontario. They flow over, and then right there, that's where your sponge is getting squeezed, and you're getting some light lake effect snow. We also get it down here by Lake Erie. You can see the exact same process is going on. That's where we're picking up some moisture. The air right there is a little bit colder, so it's that moisture's turned into light lake effect snow right there. For the most part, though, that is about as light of snow as you're ever going to see. Clicking through all the way into Sunday, because this is an overall pattern that's going to be continuing throughout the weekend. If you want to see that cold air continues to settle over the Northeast. Actually looks to be even getting a little bit colder on Saturday. Looking at our afternoon highs on Saturday. Oops, I accidentally just clicked at humidity. Looking at afternoon highs on Saturday. Looks like majority of the Northeast for your afternoon highs are in that below freezing temperature, below 32 degrees, and in some cases in the teens. Now, that's going to be cold, but it's also going to allow that lake effect snow to continue throughout the weekend. So just throughout the weekend, as that cold air remains over the region and we continue to get that lake effect, that's the totals we're expected to get, maybe 1 to 2 inches. Nothing real major there. Now, I also want to just click far off into the forecast. I usually don't do this, but yeah, so that's all the way into next Friday and Saturday is when it looks like there might be the next snowstorm pushing into the upper Northeast. There's 2 things I'll say about that. One, as you get into Friday and Saturday, I guarantee that's not actually what's going to happen. More than 3 days out, especially with snowfall forecasts, the models are not very good more than 3 days out. So guaranteed that's not actually going to be what it looks like Friday and Saturday. And then 2, even that doesn't look like all that much snow. It looks like maybe 2 to 4 inches in very northern parts of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and then that one little bullseye there in Maine. So if I had to give my prediction right now, I'm thinking not any major snowstorms in the cards for either the Midwest or Northeast in the extended forecast. I might regret saying that, but I'm partly going off of all that warm air that's going to be moving from the Midwest. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, that's actually pretty good considering I have about 60 tabs open. All that warm air that's over the North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota right now, 25 to 30 degrees above average, that is going to be finding its way into the Northeast. So that is the same time when that storm is expected to come in, Friday and Saturday, and you'll notice much of the Northeast is well above average temperatures, 25 to even 30 degrees above average. So I'm thinking the chances for any major snowstorms in the Midwest or Northeast are not looking too good. And if we do get it, it'll just be in the very, very northern parts of maybe Michigan and northern parts of Maine. So we'll have to stay tuned there to see. Oh, you got a little sneak peek later in the video. Clicked on the wrong one. We'll have to see what happens in the extended forecast there. As of right now, this is the Winter Storm Severity Index. This tells you what kind of weather you're expecting in the next 3 days. And you can see with that lake effect snow, just minor impacts are expected right there off of Lakes Erie and Ontario, where some of that lake effect was falling and we're maybe getting an inch of snow. Minor impacts expected there, widespread limited impacts. Nothing too major for the Northeast in the as far off as I am comfortable looking in the forecast. So just seeing that another way, there's that big low pressure system up there. That's just going to continue to rotate and rotate and rotate. I almost wonder if I typically don't use the term polar vortex, but I wonder if that could actually be classified as a polar vortex, because it looks to be like what was causing some of that Arctic blast of cold air we had in the central parts of the country 2 weeks ago, where it just continues to rotate and rotate, bringing that cold air to the northeast. So again, with that being said, there's a few things that are questionable in the forecast, and we'll just have to stay tuned to see what happens there. So now let's direct our focus into the western half of the country for the rest of this video. The first one we're going to be looking at is this little trough that's going to be building in actually throughout the day today, and then you'll see the very bottom of it grazes northern California. At this point, some of those isobars right there, the lines of constant pressure, are actually looking pretty close together, which means we're likely going to see some heavy rain and snow as we get into this afternoon, this evening, and into tonight. Now, the thing about that storm, though, it's a quick mover. So it looks like it's going to have some stronger effects, but it's for a very short period of time before it's gone. The next system moving in is the exact opposite. You notice how far apart these isobars look as this trough moves in starting next Monday. You notice how far apart that is. That gives you an idea that it's a weaker system. It's not one of those storms that drops heavy rain and heavy snow. It might just be light rain and light snow, but another difference is how slowly it moves. So that's Monday into Tuesday into Wednesday into Thursday into Friday, and then Saturday is when it's finally gone. So to sum that up, first system is packing a little bit harder of a punch, but it's quick. The second one is weaker, but it stays over us for a longer period of time. So overall, both storms are actually looking relatively similar as you add all the totals together. So looking at the northwest first, because that's where that first storm for the most part is hitting. With that first storm, if you just want to see it again, you can see it stretches down into NorCal, but almost all of central and southern California missing out on that one. So we'll just look at the northwest first, and then we'll dive into just California later in the video. So right there, that's possibly, we might actually already be starting to get some rain with this system as it brings some light rain to the coast of Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. And that's actually another thing to keep your eye on as I click through here. This isn't one of those storms that just moves through quickly. It seems to hang out along the coast for a little while, all the way starting, again, right now, Monday morning, as we get into this afternoon and this evening. That's where it's still over the coast, and that's bringing heavy rain, especially to Northern California. And then we're going to start to see that heavy rain and heavy snow build into Northern California as it dips down. That's the part where the little trough is just skimming through NorCal, and as you can see, it looks to be packing a punch as it does. Heavy rain along the coast, and then some heavy snowfall in the mountains. For the most part, in Washington and Oregon, this is looking like a lighter system than it is going to be for Northern California. And then as that second one starts to push in, it'll first bring some snow to Washington and Oregon. That's right about there in the overall pattern. That's where it is bringing some light rain and snow to Washington and Oregon. And then that one is for the most part in California, so we'll focus on that later in the video. First, clicking through, that's what's expected with the first system. As you can see, some heavy rain down here in Oregon and very northern parts of California, getting 1 inch to 2.5 inches of rain right there. So again, I would say that's good news, as this is one of the places in California that is still in drought. And then up here in Washington, that seems to be the other bullseye. That's where we have 2 inches of rain building in along the coast. And then when we get to the snowfall forecast, you'll see that's still an area that is expecting to get some heavy snowfall. Right here in the Olympic Mountains, that's 2 to 3 feet of snow right there. So out of the entire country, I would say that's the one bullseye where we actually have some major weather happening. Right there where we could be picking up 2 to 3 feet of snow. You can see throughout the Cascades, for the most part, getting 6 to 8 inches, which compared to the 2 to 3 feet we were picking up with some of those storms in the past, not all that much. So I want to dive into that very bullseye right here in the Olympic Mountains of Washington to keep our eye on it right there. So it looks like we're already picking up some precipitation last night. As we got into early this morning, that was continuing, and we continue to get that. It's not extreme snowfall, but it's certainly not light. Light snowfall is right there where it's maybe 0.01 inches per hour. That's in the 0.1 to 0.2 inch per hour range right there. And it falls over the same area for a long period of time, both with that first system and then as that second one starts to build in Sunday at 4 a.m. Actually, before I get ahead of myself there, let's see when that first system's gone. So it came in, let's make sure we're at the beginning here, came in last night. Looks to be bringing light rain and snow to Washington until, I would say, 10 p.m. Saturday. And then 10 p.m. Saturday is when the second system starts to push in, and that looks like it's going to be bringing heavier snow to very northern parts of Washington, especially there in the Olympic Mountains. So right there in that bullseye, it looks like we're still picking up snow all the way into 10 a.m. Monday with that system. So that's why the totals right there are going to be the strongest. One, there are some periods where we're getting heavier snowfall, and then we're also picking up snowfall for a large period of time. So by this next Monday, so that's not all that far off in the forecast, so I'd say this is basically guaranteed to happen. I should never say guaranteed when we're talking about weather forecasts, but it's high confidence this is going to happen. Looking like 2 to 3 feet of snow there in the Olympic Mountains. There are a couple areas in the Cascades that'll get over a foot of snow, but for the most part, 6 to 8 inches throughout central Washington. But it is that bullseye right there where the heaviest precipitation seemed to be coming in both with the first storm and the second one. So looking at the winter storm severity index, you can see that is just zooming out so you can see the whole country first. That is how much the United States has taken a break from the extreme weather right now. Almost nothing. Just to put this into perspective, it was only 2 weeks ago when we had extreme stretching all the way from Texas into Pennsylvania with that crazy ice storm and that Arctic blast of cold air. It was all the way right there. We also had wind chill warnings up here in Montana, so we had major impacts expected up here as well. That's about as blank as I've seen this map in a while. Now, there are those limited impacts with lake effect snow in New York, and then limited to minor impacts up here in Northern California. The one spot in the entire country where we actually have some major impacts are here in the Olympic National Park in the Olympic Mountains. So that's the one place, perhaps in the entire country, where there's some cause for concern. Now down here in California, I'll mention, even though that rain and snow did appear to be coming in at relatively heavy amounts at some points, it's a quick mover when it comes in here. So up here in Washington, that's able to continue to pile on the totals for almost starting last night into Sunday. Down here in California, it's going to be a quick mover into this afternoon and tonight, and then it looks like we're in the clear throughout most of this weekend before that second storm moves in. So that's why there's the difference in the severity of the impacts expected. Much quicker mover right down here in Northern California. So let's actually move into California now, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So right there, you can see that little tiny trough work its way through NorCal, and then as soon as it's here, it's gone. It's a quick mover, and then we're in the clear throughout most of the weekend. That's going to be actually nice because we've picked up some snow, so if you're a skier or snowboarder, you might be able to go up to the mountains to enjoy some of the snow we're going to be getting. We'll look at the exact totals in a second. Unfortunately, a little bit less than was originally expected, but it'll still be something, at least to cover up the ice we have had for quite some time now. And then it's also going to be some good surf this weekend, so looking forward to that clear weather along the coast. Now, as that builds in, you see it starts up in the north. That's why Washington, especially the Olympic Mountains, we're getting that heavy snow first. But then, for the most part, you're going to see it almost looks like it turns into a giant cutoff low. Now, the reason it's so big is possibly part of the reason it's so weak. If that was much closer together, much tighter, that would be a much stronger storm for a select location. As it turns out, though, the models have it coming in Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, as a much wider system, which means a lot of that energy is going to be spread out. So biggest thing I noticed there is just how far apart those isobars are. That typically is an indication that the effects aren't going to be all that strong. But you can see it covers almost all of California, so as it slowly moves through, that's going to bring light rain and snow to almost every part of California. So if we want to see that when it comes to precipitation, there's that rain. It should start coming in the next couple of hours into Northern California. And then right here throughout the day today into even early tomorrow morning, that's where that little trough was coming through NorCal. Start to get some heavy rain along the coast as we get into this afternoon, into this evening. That's going to spread into the Bay Area. And then that heavy snow builds in throughout tonight and into tomorrow morning into the Sierras. You'll notice for the most part though, all of SoCal missing out on that first storm. Now it's a different story with the second storm. So while that first one comes through quick and intense, the second one comes in slow and weak. So right there you see we're in the clear, where we'll have some nice surf conditions along the coast, maybe even some sunshine on Sunday. And then right here, getting into Monday, that's where that large, weak system starts to just slowly move over California, which is honestly my favorite kind of storm, because when it's a long period where you're adding... Sorry, how am I trying to say this? So if your precipitation is coming in a very quick peak, like we're seeing with that first one, that's where property damages and impacts are usually a little bit more of a threat. When it's just light rain and light snow, but building up for a long period of time, that's where you get some of the great rainfall and snowfall that helps with your drought and wildfire, but there's no quick, intense period where property damage is a huge concern. I'll have to work on saying that in the future. That was way too wordy. So getting into Monday, that's where we start to get some light rain and snow into Northern California. And then you're going to notice, just like when we're seeing as this system goes through, it starts up in NorCal and then it mostly transitions down into SoCal. So we're going to see that on the precipitation map as well. Starts in NorCal and then for the most part moves into SoCal on Wednesday. So by Wednesday, it looks like NorCal's almost completely out of it. And then by Thursday, it looks like it's almost even gone from Southern California. Possibly still getting some light rain and snow as getting into Thursday afternoon. But that's part of what is reducing the totals with this second system. One part is just the fact that it overall looks like it's coming in weaker. Those isobars are much more spread out. And then two, it appears to be moving a little bit faster than originally expected. By about Thursday, you can see it's almost moved down into Mexico. Whereas in yesterday's model run, that rain and snow was continuing for SoCal throughout Thursday and Friday. By Friday, almost all of California looks to be completely in the clear. So you'll be able to see that on the totals for precip. That's the first storm. You can see right there up in Northern California, this looks basically the same as previous forecast models. We have that 1 to 2 inches building in, especially along the coast where we have the heaviest rainfall. And then as we continue to click through, that's going to be bringing some, as that second system moves through, that's where we're bringing some rain all the way down into SoCal, but you'll notice it looks less than yesterday. We're still getting 1 inch along the coast, which I'll take, that's something. But yesterday was showing about 1.5 inches, even 2 inches in some places. Looks like with that weakening system and the fact that it's moving through a little bit faster on Thursday, looks like our overall totals will be reduced. But in the good news, everyone still appears to be getting some rain. So with the snowfall, it's a similar story. The first system, closer in time, so it makes sense that the models are a bit better in forecasting it. That one looks pretty similar. About that bullseye where we're getting a foot of snow up in Northern California, almost the entire large stretch of Tahoe going down to Mammoth looks to only not be getting very much snow at all. Then as we click with the second system, that one's more widespread, and it should bring a foot of snow to majority of the Sierras, maybe 6 to 8 inches here, so that will bring some snow up to the mountains if you're skiing or snowboarding this weekend, and then it's also going to bring some snow down to SoCal. Now, how this looks different from yesterday is yesterday, this was showing 2 feet of snow in the mountains and then a foot of snow down into Southern California. Now it's looking like it'll be more like 1 foot of snow, and then down here in SoCal, maybe 6 to 8 inches. But overall, I would say both these storms are great news for California, and here's why. This is showing the drought that we're currently in. There's extreme to severe drought throughout NorCal and SoCal. It's been quite some time since, except for that system that moved through earlier this week, there haven't been very many storms in SoCal or throughout most of California. I think we typically get 4 or 5 of those big atmospheric rivers that usually provide the majority of our rainfall for the season. As of right now, I think there's only been 1 or 2 of them. So that's what I'm hoping for over the next 2 weeks. A couple more of those big atmospheric rivers to bring in maybe 10 to 20 more inches of rainfall and help out not only with our rainfall deficits for this season, but with the drought overall. So that's why I'm looking forward to the next 2 weeks, where it appears that California, for the most part, is going to be getting rainfall. Just looking at, I know we already looked at basically this map, but I just want to look at the exact timing. This is a good way to look at the timing. Looks to be coming in 10 a.m. Friday, and then that heavy rain builds all the way into the Bay Area by 10 p.m. Friday, while the northern parts of California are getting heavy snow. By 4 a.m. on Saturday, it's already moved out of the Bay Area, and we're getting that heavy snow up into the Sierras. So if you're snowboarding on Saturday, most likely going to be some good fresh powder up there waiting for you. And then right there on Sunday at 4 a.m., that's where we get one little trace of some rain and snow. It almost seems like a little fluke right there, because the real system's coming in 10 a.m. on Monday, but you'll notice it's just light rain and snow all the way until about 10 a.m. on Thursday. So big difference from that first system. The first one is very quick, going back in 10 a.m. Friday to 10 a.m. Saturday, and it's gone. The next one is about 10 a.m. Monday all the way into 10 a.m. Thursday. So much lighter rain, much lighter snow, but falling for a longer period of time. Looking at that first system, that's what's bringing the heavy rain up to the coast. Again, 1 to 2 inches up there, and then maybe 0.1 to 0.3 inches in the Bay Area. With the second system, remember that one is more for the Bay Area. We're not adding I know it seems like it's more for the coast, but you think that's adding on to the totals we already had up there. So in total, by next Thursday, with both of these systems combined, that's what the coast is getting, but most of that was coming from the first system. You can see down here in the Bay Area for San Francisco, most of that is coming with the second system, and it's great to see that areas around Santa Rosa, Napa, Sonoma, typically some areas where we have the worst wildfires, that looks to be the spot that's getting the most rainfall, with that second system getting 1.5 inches to maybe even 2 inches in some places. Looking at the snowfall, that's the first system, again bringing that bullseye of a foot of snow up to Northern California. Not all that much to areas of like Tahoe, maybe getting 2 to 4 inches. With the second system, that's where we can bring our totals throughout the widespread Sierras up over a foot, maybe even 1.5 feet. So I know that skiing and snowboarding has been bad recently. It looks like our luck might be changing as the overall pattern for California is shifting to more precipitation. So again, just showing this as it comes through. There's that first system. This now shows vorticity. You can think of it just as storm energy. You can see right there. That's where we have, that's about as strong as you ever see this map. In that turquoise blue color, that's why we have that heavy rain and snow with that first system going through NorCal. And then you notice the next one doesn't have any of those turquoise blues. It's just a couple areas where we're getting some purples down here, but that's all the way down into Mexico. That's why we're just getting light rain and snow as that slowly meanders across the state. So looking at SoCal, let's check out. So you see, that's the first system. Maybe some light rain on the central coast, but for the most part, missing out. The second system moves in a little bit later, you think, because it is moving from north to south. Looks to move in around 10 a.m. on Tuesday, and then it's also going to hang out for longer. Going into Wednesday, still getting light rain and snow throughout the majority of Southern California, working into Wednesday night, and then it looks like by Thursday morning, it's for the most part gone. So, a couple changes I see there. Yesterday, there was a period at about, it was the same time, it was 4 a.m. Wednesday, where we're seeing the bulk of this storm for SoCal. Yesterday, this looked extreme. It looked like we were getting heavy rain and heavy snow. Now it looks a bit more moderate. Maybe some areas that still get some rain on the heavier side. And then the other thing that's changed is it appears to be, for the most part, gone by Thursday morning. In past model runs, it was continuing all the way through Monday. So if we look at the accumulated precip, that's what the first storm, maybe 0.1 inches of rain stretching down into Atascadero. And then there's the second system. It's a pretty cool graphic to see that come in. And it's also cool to see that majority of the coast getting an inch of rain, although it's not the 1.5 inches or 2 inches we were talking about yesterday. Still encouraging to see there. But I think the moral of the story is this second system has been very unconfident. I think that's a word. There hasn't been very much confidence in the models. They seem to be changing every time we look at them. So we're going to have to continue to watch this in future forecasts because every time we check it, it seems to change. And that's weather forecasting. That's why it's fun to look at these weather forecasts every single day because there's always something new to look at. There's the overall snowfall that we're going to be getting. Like I said, areas of SoCal actually getting 6 to 8 inches there. But again, we're going to have to wait and see what happens because every time we look at that, that changes. So overall, when it comes to the national forecast, I would say it's a great forecast. It's good news for this weekend as the extreme weather seems to be giving us a break. The one place where we really do have some weather going on is here in the west. But for the most part, that's an area that's in severe and extreme drought, so it's great to see some of that rain and snow moving in. We do have some light rain or moderate rain moving through Texas and Louisiana, some chance of some thunderstorms, but just about an inch of rainfall expected down there, not expecting anything too extreme. We also have some lake effect going into New York, but just about an inch of snow up there, mixed with that cold air, nothing to worry about, I would say, up in the Northeast. And as we go through this weekend into the start of next week, you see the extreme weather continues to give us a break. Almost the entire country is completely blank of precipitation throughout the weekend. And then not much is happening until we get into midweek next week as that storm starts moving through California, bringing some more much needed rain and snow. Again, that's some great news there. And then we might get a rainstorm up here in the Midwest, which I think is going to be mostly rain. I don't think there's much opportunity for any major snowstorms in the forecast, although you might see some action going on far out in the forecast next Friday and Saturday. That's going to be mixed with well above average temperatures, 20 to 25 degrees above average. And so, one, I don't actually think there's going to be any major snowstorms up there. Two, that's a ways off in the forecast, so I guarantee as we get into next Friday and Saturday, that forecast model is going to change. So what we'll have to do is just keep our eye on it to see how it does. Now, one last glimpse at the weather forecast or the warnings, because again, this is a good parting note for the weekend. For the most part, throughout the entire country, you can just enjoy your weekend. There is going to be a storm moving through California today and into tomorrow morning. Going to be bringing some nice rain and snow, and you can see there's going to be some winds with it. And then we have another storm moving in next week, helping us out even further with the drought and the future wildfire risk. So overall, I'd say good weekend ahead of us. You can enjoy this break in the extreme weather, no Arctic blasts or major ice storms. So I hope everybody has a great weekend, and thank you for watching.